Okay, today we're going to learn how to do a basic color edit. There are many different ways that you can edit an image in Photoshop, but this is one of the most basic and user-friendly ways to get started. The first thing you're going to do is you're going to make sure that your layers palette is open. In order to open your layers palette, if it is not visible, you're going to go to Window and make sure that layers is checked off. Left-hand side, we're going to make sure that we have our toolbar open. Same thing, up at the top, and you can go to Tools. The first step in Photoshop is going to be to duplicate the background layer. On your keyboard, you're going to hit Command J, and you're going to make a duplicate copy of your background layer. This is going to be the basic workflow for any time that we edit any images in Photoshop to create that duplicate layer. Step 2 is going to be to check the levels. In order to do that, you're going to go down to your layers palette, what I call the black and white cookie. You're going to click on that, and you're going to look for the levels option. When you select the levels option, it's going to tell you how your image was taken and if there's any errors in terms of shadows and highlights. General rule of thumb is to look to see where your dark triangle is and your light triangle is, and make sure that they're to the end of the mountain peaks. In this image's case, looks to be okay, so we don't need to make any changes there. And you can exit out that box and go back to your layers palette. Step 2 is going to be to go to your black and white cookie again, and we're going to look for the color balance option. This is where we're going to fix any errors that we see on the image. As this dialog box opens up, you're going to ask yourself what kind of might be dominating the image. In this case, the image is too yellow. So we're going to look for the yellow option here in terms of color, and we're going to move our adjustment the opposite direction towards the blue. As you start to move it, you're going to see that the image is going to change. But it isn't just one step that might, be the end-all fix for this image. As I started to move it to the right towards blue, I saw the image started to turn a little bit green. So I'm going to find the green slider and I'm going to move it away from green towards magenta. You don't want to go too much. Sometimes when we first start, we go a little overboard, and then we actually make the image worse than it was when we started. Other things that you can start to do is, step back, look at the image. Are the areas that I know are supposed to be a certain color still a little bit too much green or too red? In this case, her hair should be more of a black tone or dark brown. It looks a little bit green. So I'm going to move it away from the cyan towards the red. And then also I can go into my shadow option, the areas that are darker on the image, and I can modify them. Looks like I went a little overboard with the red, so I'm going to move it towards the cyan. And then I'm going to go into highlights, which be the lighter parts of the region up here in the background, on the parts of her cheekbone, and I can mess around with that. I still feel like it's a little bit on the yellow side, so I'm going to move it towards blue. Now, as you look at this image, your eyes are going to automatically adjust. So a good thing to do is to toggle back and forth between the visible and invisible option in your adjustment layer palette, or you can also go to your layers palette and you can click on the eyeball to kind of reset your eyes. When you're finished, exit out of the adjustment dialog box, and then we're going to go to our last step, which is the brightness and contrast option. It's also located under the black and white cookie. You can click on that, and we're going to go to brightness and contrast. Now for this adjustment, we're going to be looking for the exposure. Do we need to make the image lighter? Do we need to make it darker? If you need to make it lighter, you move your brightness slider to the right. If you need to make it darker, if it was an overexposed image, you'd move it to the left. Contrast is adding a little bit of value in the brights and darks. The lights kind of gives your image a little bit more of a pop. When we begin, a lot of times we see that people tend to want to make it over contrasted. However, it's not really what we're going for. We're just looking for a nice, clean edit. When you are finished, you can exit this out. And let's imagine that you come back tomorrow and you want to make more changes after you've saved it as a Photoshop file. You do not need to add more adjustments down here at the bottom. Instead, you can go back to your layer. Maybe your teacher tells you it's too red. Double click on the color balance, and you can go back and modify it up here. So I can go back and change any of the edits that I made in previous days. So that's your basic color edit. When you're finished, you can go to File, Save As, and you can save it to your desktop, rename the file, and hit Save. You're going to get an option. Do you want to maximize compatibility? You can click OK. The one thing to be careful of is that you never want to click OK if it's asking you to replace another file.